fancy meeting you here.
Likewise.
This is amazing. This is the first year of this show. A few years from now, when this is the biggest show in the world, people are going to think back to this moment with two dudes talking about lip gloss as really the sort of signature thing that kicked off the show. Very brave.
Yeah. Jason, it's all about you.
And speaking of it being all about me, we are in Vegas, and I do get a little dried out. So I just wanted to sort of hydrate here real quick. Okay, perfect. You guys laugh, but that's going on Twitter right now. And tomorrow, you watch, the middle-aged digital marketing segment is going to blow up for you guys.
We're going to hire you as a micro-influencer.
So speaking of micro-influencers, I think the audience is used to me walking out here to Miley Cyrus music, but that music has a special connotation for you, doesn't it?
It's really warm memories for us. We launched in 2009, and that song came out in 2010. And Miley's crew had asked us to send over some EOS lip balm for their music video, which we did. And when that video launched, it was such a huge hit, and we had all our early consumers who knew about us, and we were just going fully national at that time. And her fans happened to be a bunch of our consumers, number of our consumers, and they really boosted the brand for us, and it was amazing. So, you know, we really like Miley.
I don't blame you. Watching the video, you guys are super busy. It seems sort of easy to take your success for granted today, but I'm sort of curious, you started back in 2009. What was the original impetus for starting the company? What was the original idea?
10 years ago, in 2009, we saw a problem in the lip balm category. Women who are 80% of consumers in the category thought of lip balm as a part of their beauty routine, part of their personal care routines. They use the product every day, multiple times a day, at home, publicly. Yet when we looked at brands, nobody had a product that was designed for women. Everybody was relatively undifferentiated in the same tube, and they were all playing on one axis, which was price. And we looked at that and we said, look, the insight here is very obvious. If the consumer thinks of this as a beauty routine, then this is an experience that she wants to enjoy. And what we need to give her is a product that she's going to feel fits perfectly into that moment of joy and delight for her. And you know, that led us to basically create the round lip balm that you saw many images of a few moments ago. And what we did with it was we started layering and texturing things into the product. So our packaging, as an example, was soft touch. It wasn't the hard, cold plastic that the others had, much softer. We put the curves in. The category had basic flavors, cherry, vanilla. We had summer fruit and honeysuckle. Right? And I could go on, but the whole point about this was that the consumer should feel that moment of delight every time that she came into contact with our product. And that was the insight that drove the business.
Very cool. So you clearly had this insight about an opportunity for a differentiated product. I also do think of you as one of the real pioneers in sort of word-of-mouth marketing and what has become influencer marketing. Was that an important part of the growth, and was that intentional, or was that a happy accident?
No, it was very intentional. We did two things. The first thing we did was we wanted to sample our products. And again, this is way back in 2009 when Facebook was far less than it is today. What we did was we created our own sharing program for sampling. So we seeded the idea with micro-influencers, being people, right? They were all organic. They weren't, the term micro-influencer didn't exist. And we said, you can come to a special website we have, get a free sample of product. You can then send a personalized link to your friends, 10 of your friends, and they can come back in. And if you come back in again, you can see your tree grow of how your friends have, how your circle of influence has grown, and so you can visually see that work. And that was the first thing we did. And it was terrific because you could tweet out the link to your friends or you could send it on Facebook. There was so much volume on Twitter that Twitter actually shut us down for half a day while they tried to figure out what was going on. And, you know, we gave away all the lip balms we wanted to in a day and a half. And the second part of it was we had a very deliberate strategy to sign up with artists, people that we believed were going to be major influencers, because our view was you had to get the word out. We started the company without any external funding. We still haven't taken any money from anybody, so there were two of us. We put our own money into this, and we said, what's the best way to amplify what we're doing? And we had Kim Kardashian, who, you know, we were fortunate that she actually decided to use our product and post about it very early on. And that was a nice boost. And then we got a number of others. And some we made the effort, and many just came by themselves.
Wow. So reinvent a category that's been there for a long time, totally new way of capturing an audience, and didn't raise any external money. I'm loving this because I'm just imagining were you to be start over today and go on Shark Tank, they would literally cream you. They would obliterate you. They would give you no chance. You maybe would get a royalty deal from Kevin.
Maybe you're right. We wouldn't survive on QVC. So
fast forward today, it feels like you're much more than a product. It feels like you're a company. You've sort of stood the test of time and continue to grow. Can you tell us a little bit about where EOS is today?
Sure. I'll put it in a few different ways. In our first year, we sold 1 million pieces of our signature product. Today, we sell more than that every week.
Wow.
Along with all the other products that we sell. We hit the $250 million revenue mark over 3 years ago. We operate with 8 countries. We have offices in 8 countries, and we actively market in 18 countries. That's where we sell our products. And we do all of that, really, and this is the most amazing part, we do that with less than 100 people. And they're a terrific team of people because they come every day full of creative energy, with one sole purpose or 2 sole purposes. One is to make sure that consumers actually enjoy using our product every day, get a terrific experience, and the second part they come is, how do we make the company better? And we're very, very fortunate to have had those people.
Well, very cool. Congrats on that success.
Thank you.
How have the marketing tactics that you've had to employ to sort of attract and retain customers evolved? I sort of think of influencer marketing as being very different today than it was when you started it back in 2009.
Absolutely. There's a couple of things. When we began, we did influencer marketing, as we just talked about. We also did print ads. We were on TV year and a half, I think in our second or third year of operation. So very classic PR was through the magazines, very classic marketing. What's changed dramatically, and to state the obvious, is now there are many, many more sources of content for our hyper-connected, hyper-informed consumer. What that does for us, it changes things in 2 ways. It changes the number of stories that we can tell. Earlier, when brands had to tell a story, you had to curate and pick the one story you were going to tell because that was your campaign. That was all you told consumers about. Today, there are so many different stories that we can tell. As a very simple example, something that we do in supply chain, right, would never have made the cut for a brand earlier on to tell a story because it's not relevant to everybody. Today, we can go tell consumers that actually care and get an emotional sort of high from these things about the things we do with growers in Asia and Africa for the ingredients that we source. It matters to them. It doesn't matter to many consumers, but to those whom it matters, it creates a very strong bond. The other thing that's happened is creating empathy, and Jason, we talked about this backstage, has been something that's been really important to us. The consumer's empathy for the product. What is the emotional link she has with the product? And what has happened is that the ways in which we do that have really evolved from the imagery that we used in the past to now very many different tactics that we use.
Makes perfect sense. One of the things you mentioned, you talked about your channels to market, and if I'm not mistaken, you're predominantly wholesale.
Correct.
So a lot of that messaging, you have to partner with retailers, or it has to, at the very least, be synergistic with retailers. How do you think about your relationship with the retailers, and do you have any tricks for the other brands in this room that they should be thinking about?
You're absolutely correct in that we are 94, 93% wholesale with bricks retailers in the US. In China, on the flip side, we're 60% e-commerce. We used to be, when we started, 100% bricks, and now we're now down to 40. In the US, I will say this, is that shopper marketing, which is partnering with our retailers to be able to get the message out, has changed significantly. What we find is that retailers are seeing the same variety of content channels out there as we do. So they are attempting to tell stories and establish their own brand. And as they establish their own brand, what we find is that we can have the stories sort of be accretive to each other, because we're going after the same consumer. Our consumer is a consumer that they also want, and when the consumer gets two different stories, one that expresses the retailer's brand and one that expresses our brand, she feels twice the connection. And that's what we find seems to be working the best for us.
And do you find, do individual retailers have a strong enough POV about who their customer is that story is fundamentally different from retailer to retailer, or should it be?
I feel it should be. Some retailers, as you well know, are much more evolved in that regard. I mean, the obvious
You
ones,
can name names.
Thank you. No, the obvious ones in the food space, Trader Joe's, Whole Foods have always had a point of view. They've Target in the mass space, in Walmart. They are much more evolved than a number of the others with whom we do business. We find that when the retailer has really thought about what they're doing and curated what is in their stores and curated their message so that it is resonating for a specific consumer need, that's when we find the best value equation for both of us.
Awesome. I want to turn our attention a little bit to sort of how you think about your brand. One of the things that's interesting to me is it feels like timelines are so compressed, and it's so easy for new entrants to come into the market today that maybe wasn't as true 10 years ago. How do you competitively differentiate yourself? Do you have a moat to protect you from other people sort of being fast followers of your brand?
So there's two parts to that question, and I'll answer both of them. The first part is, you are absolutely correct. The speed to market from making a product to getting it to the consumer, the barriers to entry are almost non-existent. But the first step in that is to understand what your brand is going to be, why you're going to be relevant to consumers, and then have a product that is not another Me Too, an undifferentiated product. What we see is a lot of people come into market and they have beautiful stories, but the stories that they tell consumers and they engage consumers with are not linked to the product promise. And so what happens is you get a consumer who comes in there, buys a couple of times, and then is disappointed because the product doesn't live up to the story. So what hasn't changed is the timeline to actually come up with a brand proposition, to understand the space in which your brand is going to succeed, and then identify a product proposition that is going to be successful in filling that space. That for us is what we believe is really important, because otherwise we're going to simply have products that come to market and go away, and the ones that actually thought through and have a reason for being will be the ones that survive. The other sort of part to that is, in terms of moat, because we spend time thinking about our products, we also have a lot of IP, patents, around it. Around lip balm, I think we have 180 patents.
Wow.
Right, so that makes it difficult. When we started our business, we knew we'd have copycats. We knew people would find their way around our IP. We guessed the timeline for that would be about 7 years. 6 years into our business, we had the first set of copycats. Nowadays, there isn't 7 years anymore. You're lucky if you have 3. And so what we say is, you have to be thinking and having a long-term innovation plan. What do you do next? If we were to do the business today, we wouldn't start with just the products we have and go to market with them. We'd have a 5-year innovation plan before going to market.
Nice. That's actually a perfect segue to maybe our last topic. Where is EOS going, and do you have any advice for any maybe slightly younger Sanjivs in the audience that might be starting a new brand?
So where EOS is going is, and this keeps me awake a little bit at night, is to understand what are the limits of the EOS brand, because no brand can be everything to everybody. And we know what EOS is. We are thinking very hard about what the limit of that brand is. What we do know is that the insight behind EOS travels globally. And we also know that it travels to other categories and other spaces. And we are much more thoughtful about how we will cover all of that space. The advice that I would give, and look, I have a son who's just starting his own consumer products business. So I'll tell you the advice I gave him, which is start by identifying a space that is relevant and will be relevant to consumers for a really long time. And then identify a consumer need that is not being met. That need may be a performance need, it may be an emotional need, it may be an affordability need, right? Those are the 3 axes on which most needs tend to exist. Find one. Find a need that you believe will actually be there for the long term. Don't get distracted by short-term changes in commerce, short-term changes in communication, short-term trends that are up and down, because those will always be there, and we have to react and adapt to that. So it is not about ignoring them, but at the end of the day, think about what is long-term and focus on that while starting a business. And if you stay focused on that, then all the other stuff is manageable.
Well, that sounds like great advice, and as we're the last thing between everyone and cocktails, that's going to be a great place for us to end it tonight. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Chris.